You don't have to rush right back. I'm going to tell a couple of things. You know what? There's one thing I want to say about our priests that's very important for our priests. I have been in contact with literally hundreds of priests and many bishops in the last year that are ready to step up, that are stepping up. Your own bishop, Archbishop here in San Francisco, he does some wonderful work. Now, all too often, these guys, they feel like they're out on a limb, that they don't have people backing them up. Here's what I want to tell you, and this is very important, particularly here. When a priest in a mixed parish says something that's notably orthodox, I guarantee you, every leftist is giving him the business. But all too often, the only time the parish priest hears from the Orthodox is when he stumbles and makes some error in the rubrics. Stand behind our priests. When they do the right thing, thank them. Invite them out to do something. And when you invite them out for a family picnic, for heaven's sakes, don't talk to them about religion the whole time. Let them be people. You know what I mean? Busman's holiday and that. But stand behind them. You know, I know how tough it is. Back when I was doing radio, I talked about abortion a lot. I only did secular radio, but I talked about it. And I talked about Margaret Sanger. I tell people, Margaret Sanger was one of the great monsters of the 20th century. You know she was a eugenicist. You know that she hated black folks. She hated the inferior races. And that was what Planned Parenthood was about, was wiping them out. I used to read quotes from her book, The Pivot of Civilization, to people. Like the quote that always sticks in my mind, that the kindest thing that the family of a poor child can do for it is to put a bullet in its head. Margaret Sanger actually said that. She was vicious. I rank her with Hitler and Stalin, the great monsters of the 20th century, and she's considered a hero. Well, the abortion industry went on a crusade to try to get me fired from the radio station on that. They were sending letters. They had over 300 letters that they got. I was just under siege on the thing. Fortunately, at that time, I was the top-rated guy at the station, you know. What finally did it, I would tell people to, don't take my word for it, don't take Planned Parenthood's word for it. Read Margaret Sanger and take her word for what she was. I had a woman call me off air one day. She said that she had been assigned by the whatever abortion clinic that she was with to monitor me. And she took my advice, which led her to resign, or so she said, and she said several other people did. And she thanked me for it. I believe that she told me the truth because the letters just stopped shortly thereafter. But one thing that struck me, at that time in the Chicago area, I was the leading voice in media for the pro-life movement. Do you know how many letters I got from pro-lifers supporting me? 0. I asked, later I became friends with the head of the pro-life movement there. I said, why didn't you guys send anything? She said, well, you were just doing what you were supposed to do. Oh, yeah? I was out on a limb. They were going, but I was doing what I was supposed to do. Your priests are like that. And you do pay a price for it. Later, now back in those days, I don't do this no more. I've been celibate for 13 years, but back in those days I was chasing women. There was this woman in the newsroom, that I thought was kind of cute, so we went out to lunch and all that sort of stuff. I was going to talk her up, and I was stunned because as we were going through lunch, I figured out that she was conservative, just like me. She really had, but it never came through in her work, and I asked her why. And she said, oh, Charlie. She said, you're bulletproof here. You're the top guy at the station. They couldn't do anything to you. Said, but one of us, we started doing what you were doing, we'd be fired before the week is out. I want you to think about that. That's important. Your silence, your decision that they're just doing what they're supposed to do, it has a price tag. paid for it. You've got more friends in the media than you think, but they don't trust you. They think that if you get out on a limb, you'll just let people saw it off under them. Don't be that way. One of the things I suggest a lot of times is a priest, a bishop, once a week. Don't make this your crusade, but once a week. When you see a priest or a bishop that says something that's worth saying, that's notable, it doesn't have to be your diocese. Send them a little handwritten note, just on a little card, thanking them. Handwritten. You know why handwritten? Because today you get everything that's all, sanitized for your protection and computerized, personalized and all that. But when you get a handwritten note, you pay attention. The personal touch. Just do that. Stand behind them. Let them know that you love them. There's a lot of them out there worried about how they're going to stand. Okay, now enough. I can start, John. I'll take questions, comments, great thoughts, silly thoughts, whatever you want to do. And you can ask any question you want to, then I'll decide whether or not to answer it. Yes? When I say the crash comes, what I've said all along, she's asking me about the apex of the storm, that we're very close, and we are in the fullness of the storm. It's unfolding around us and everything. The hail is falling. It's ugly out there. When crash comes, what that simply is, and what I've talked about, the old order is falling away. The old political order is falling away. And it will have a final crash. At this point, what's ridiculous? You see all these police being shot. You see all the terrorist activities. They're flying everywhere, and the administration pretends like it's something other than it is. And meantime, the stock market, record highs. It was stupid on their part to do that, because that tells more people that this is phony. It's not real. I've long thought the stock market is overvalued, probably by about a factor of 3. There's a guy, I have sources, okay? I have sources in government and military, and one guy that's in finance had been telling me months ago. He had called me. He had nearly quit where he was at. He said, about the automatic buys, Charlie, that were set up after. I said, yeah, what it is if the stock market starts to tank, the too big to fails, part of the deal was the too big to fails from the government, they do automatic buys to prop it up. It builds it up so that people don't lose stock confidence in the stock market. He said, for years, you'd see that kick in once or twice a week. It wasn't uncommon. And he told me then that for the last month, it had been happening 13 or 14 times a week. When they're having to put that many Band-Aids on and to, put that much makeup on, something ugly is going on. And that, what I mean is, you're seeing topplings of governments. You've seen them in the Middle East. All the governments, most all of the governments are going to topple. God has another plan. It's not just going to be chaos, although it will be chaos for a while. All the people, I'll tell you this right now, neither Hillary Clinton, nor Donald Trump, nor Paul Ryan, nor Mitt Romney, nor anybody else in the political system is going to be the next national leader here. It's all coming down. Do not panic when it does. You're going to have a period of chaos. And then God's plan will kick in. And God's plan is to have godly people run things again. It's why I've been trying to emphasize and getting some things that don't be like them. They have to pay the consequences. Those who have abused their power have to pay consequences. Otherwise, it would just encourage them to, be uglier next time. But remember, when you're fighting for that hope, when you're fighting for the rescue, when you're fighting to prepare the way, you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for them too. Because many of the people that hold power right now, who among you would like to be Hillary Clinton? Do you know what empty, vacant lives they lead? despair. They have no joy. They have this dime store image. Since they've given up on God, they have this dime store image of immortality. And they think the only immortality that they're going to get is by oppressing others, by being seen as great. We need to recall them to the truth that God is, that we are children, that God loves all of us, and they'll find joy again too. Some of them never will. But we need to act. I'm telling you right now that much sooner than any of you think, people like you are going to be making the decisions about how we're governed, rather than people like them. Their time is so short. Let us make sure that we don't replace their thugs and bums with our thugs and bums. Otherwise, we've gained nothing. So, yes?
If I remember right,
Good question. He's asking me, that what he's read, what I've written before is that the number of people, casualties lost, is incredibly small. It doesn't have to be more than about a third of what was in World War II, for which a worldwide conflagration. But I got to tell you something about that. Somebody had been pressing me early in the year on it, and I told him, I said, look, I'll go because I wanted to keep people calm. The 26 million is a floor, not a ceiling. Okay? If 100 million people were lost, 26 million people would be included in that. It's a floor, not a ceiling. But that's all that needs to be lost because of our disorder, because of where we've been already. Here's the thing about responsibility. Anything beyond that is a result of Christians failing to act as we should, of failing to reach out, and we will be held accountable. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean be nice. It means be just. For example, I have thought a long time about this. I've had a long time to think about it. How do you tamp down the violence quickly? First of all, bullies react to force very quickly. When bullies, they don't like pushback on that. You can't use mealy-mouthed means with them. It just encourages them. But when you've got a cultural-wide disorder, it's not the same. If you had one person, if you had 10 people killing their babies, you could put that to rest pretty quickly. When you got the whole country doing it, you got a whole different situation. You have to build it back. You don't want to destroy the whole culture. And this is why, and I'll be writing more about this, but I say, going forward with the restoration that I've written about now, free speech is a key part of freedom. No one will be harassed for their free speech. But those who have abused their power to try to punish those who disagree with them, they're going to jail for a while. Political prisons. They will be going to jail. Those 17 attorney generals that want to make it a felony for you to disagree with them on climate change, to jail. Kamala Harris, your attorney general in this state, that just wanted to prove how devoted to Planned Parenthood she is, she's going to jail. That prosecutor, all across. The whole thing. Now, you've got judges. If you decided in this country, the people decide. Judges don't decide policy. Judges do not do that. Those judges who decided that gay marriage must be imposed on everyone, they don't have to go to jail. They just lose their position. Now, those judges and human rights commissions that have punished Christians and tried to take their livelihoods or tried to throw them in jail, they're going to jail. It's political prisons. It's just for the duration of the storm, and they'll be released after that because people have to see that you're serious. Those idiots on college campuses that are worried about microaggressions, worry all you want to. You want to riot, you're going to jail, maybe the military if they'll take you, and all that, but that's over. On any rioters, Black Lives Matters, the new bigots, I mean, we haven't ended racism, we've just put it under new management. It's insane. You want to riot, you're going to jail. Very simply. Now, somebody asked me, what about Hillary Clinton? I said, no, she's not going to political prison because the political prisoners will be released after the rescue. On that, the criminal justice system will take care of her. But you have to do that. Now, why do you do that? To cut down on violence. If you do lackluster means, they won't think it's serious. If you just say all is forgiven, they'll think there's no consequence for brutally misusing their power to oppress their fellows. You have to do both. Show that there are immediate consequences. You're going to pay them. You will be forever barred from holding a position of public honor and trust again. And you have to set it so that it's not forever, so that when we get through the crisis, they can be reintegrated into society and get a real job. You know what I mean? Not a job of being the czar of how big your soda can be. So those are the sorts of things that are doing. Now you're asking what type of a world will it be after the rescue? I often use the example on things that'll be a perfectly ordinary world. It's not going to be magic and unicorns and all that sort of stuff. I often tell people, some people get off on these wild fantasies on that, and I sometimes tell them that no, the saints will not be your cruise director, and the angels will not be your cocktail waitresses. You're still going to have jobs. You're still going to have to choose leaders. You're still going to have to do things. God's giving us another chance to live as we're called to live. Now, right now, the world, we live in a toxic environment. It's like living in inner Detroit or inner Chicago. If your kid goes to the corner grocery to get something, you don't know if they're coming back or not. And as much as you'd like to, when you live in a toxic environment, it's like a fish. If a fish lives in a heavily polluted pond, he can't help but ingest some toxins. You drive down to Los Angeles, I got to tell you one of the stories there. What it will be like, though, is Mayberry. That's the one I like to use, where everybody just assumes that you help each other, you care for each other. When old Goober needs some help getting his boat launched, let's go over and help Goober launch that boat. You know what I mean? We just care about each other. We put up with each other's quirks. Everybody has quirks. Actually, if you're married, you know the quirks your spouse has, and if you're lucky, those become the lovable part of them, the little quirks, or her, you know what I mean? But we care about each other. It's automatically assumed that we build each other up. So that's what it'll be like, a perfectly normal world. It's very important, though, that we get this right, because we're being given another chance, and I've been told that since I was a kid in the 60s. But I've also been told it's very important that we get it right, because the next time there's a mass apostasy, that will signal the beginning of the real end, you know? So let's get it right. Now I'm going to tell you about Los Angeles once. The best autocorrect ever, or one where I think my angel did it. I think he was having a little fun with me. I was in Santa Monica. I actually got a hotel one night when I was walking because I needed. And I was in Santa Monica. It was on either a Friday or a Saturday evening. And I looked. Now, remember, I spent most of my life in Chicago. I'm not a prude and that. But I saw this girl. She couldn't have been more than 13 or 14. And she's wearing this provocative, revealing outfit. And I'm like, oh, my Lord, if her mother saw her. And then as the night went on, I'm seeing all these 12 and 13-year-old girls with their mothers. Looking like hookers. Now, like I say, I'm not a prude, but I'm a Midwestern boy. I was shocked. But, of course, they're near Hollywood. I was shocked. And I thought about that. What a poverty. These girls, all of their self-worth is built into something that's passing away. What a tragedy. And all that. I mean, physical beauty, it's a short-term thing. It's great while you got it, but it's a short-term thing. And it's almost begging for abuse. If all you value, if the only source that you think your value comes from is how you look, what a misery. Even in the period where you are a budding flower, it's going to be a misery. It really upset me. And I thought, I was really pondering. And the next day, I wrote a little post for that Abraham's Journey thing. And, I had to write on my phone for all that stuff. And the last line of it was that it was a melancholy post. I put in the last line, I put, those who put their hope in things are doomed to disappointment, ever doomed to disappointment. Click, put it. I looked at what actually popped up, and what it said was, those who put their hope in thongs are ever doomed to disappointment. I looked up, you're just playing with me now. It really was true, though, so I didn't change it. It was hilarious. Yes, ma'am. One of the things she asked, is America's Constitution worth saving or defending, or is it too passed away? This is why we will have a strong man for a time. It is worth saving, but we can't save it by normal means. Simply because the way that you have a just society, John Adams said that they had set up a republic, a constitutional republic, and that our Constitution would only work for a moral and religious people. We are not governed. To have a stable society, it's not held stable by a constitution. It's held stable by an unwritten agreement between people that this is just, and we will follow it even when we lose, because we recognize it as just and fair. If you go and puncture that completely, you have to reestablish order. What a constitution does, if it's done properly, is it writes out what the society has already decided on that thing. So right now, when we have utterly smashed the Constitution, we no longer live under a constitutional order. I mean, the president is not constrained by the Constitution. The courts do whatever they want. The Congress is just, good Lord, what a bunch of eunuchs. They holler a lot of times, but they don't defend us. I mean, I'd rather have Pee Wee Herman defending me than these rubes on things. So you have to show that there are consequences. Again, one of the strange things, whenever there's been a complete collapse in a democracy, there's always a dictator that rises for a time. Historically, always. Most times the dictator ends up being as bad as the people who brought on the storm in the first place. A few times we have had people that were noble, that actually did restore order and that did restore a sense of justice. Those are the rare times. We are going through we are going to enter into one of the most rare times in history. We will have God's man in this, will be committed right from the start to restoring a constitutional order. But a Ted Cruz, who I liked a lot, an elected president, he can't send all those people to jail that have abused their power. If you tried to use constitutional means in an unconstitutional order, you'd be treated as a chump, and you'd have more offenses. I mean, that Houston DA, when they put the grand jury that was supposed to do Planned Parenthood, and instead they worked with Planned Parenthood to try to ram David Daleiden in, that Houston DA ought to be in jail. She shouldn't just be disbarred, she should be in jail. Those offenses, I don't care if you disagree with me on something, but when you use your government power to try to punish and to try to railroad somebody, you need to go to jail and never, ever hold an office of trust again. That's where we've got to get to reestablish a constitutional order. But yes, it is worth saving. One of the things that has struck me, America's founding was very much a mirror image of the church's founding. I want you to think about the church founded by Jesus Christ. You didn't have to be of any particular nationality or ethnicity. If you adopted the principles expressed by our founder, Jesus Christ, you were fully Christian. No matter where you came from, you were fully Christian, whether you were part of the original vine or whether you were grafted on. It was amazing. It was unprecedented. Now, America was a flawed image. It was a flawed mirror. But the idea behind America is that anybody could be fully American by adopting those principles. Now, we've had these dumb butts. Notice how I said that, you know? That was very nice. We've had these dumb butts that said, no, every culture is equal. No, it's not. The Aztecs murdered millions. Blood sacrifice. I mean, all these cultures led to death, misery, poverty. Western civilization, the civilization formed by Christ, the Judeo-Christian ethic, gave freedom. It gave justice. It created those things. Now, we ever grew up, but the American founding, anybody could be fully American if you adopted American principles. Not if you adopted Aztec principles and called yourself an American. I see a sign that says, "Make America Mexico Again," and I want to deport them right now. Now, I do want to say, I hope I've answered your question, but I do want to say, too, something very important. We have insane immigration laws in this country. First of all, both the left and the right, if you come in illegally, a great nation should be able to control its borders. But if you come in illegally, we'll turn our heads and let it go. But you got to live in the shadows. You really can't live the fullness of the dignity of the human person. You can't live as a true citizen. Meantime, if you come in legally, if you want to come in legally, you're liable to wait 10 years. Now, if it were me, it would be very simple. Run a background check. If you aren't criminal, then you can come. But when you do come, for the first 3 years, you've got to have a sponsor. You're not eligible for any welfare or anything. You've got to have a sponsor that will take care of it. That would allow the churches, and I get sick of our churches, including our Catholic churches, talking about being a refuge. You want to be a refuge? Put your money where your mouth is. Start sponsoring. Jesus didn't tell you to use somebody else's money to do the good that you're not willing to do yourself. Be sponsors. Learn English. You do that, take your citizenship, and after 3 years, you've done all those things, you're fully a citizen. I'd let them all come in. And it's very important because one of the things, you see this lady? You see that lady? I tell you this, the Hispanic people, before all is said and done, an ace in the hole, they are going to be very important to us, to all of us, to faith, family, and freedom. They believe in family. They take their faith seriously. Yes, I mean, you got the ones, I mean, you go in South Los Angeles, you can get Hispanic gangs, black gangs, and white gangs, and they're all a bunch of Looney Tunes. But the Hispanic people, very work-oriented, very family-oriented, they're going to be a secret weapon. They will come into play on the rescue. So don't get caught up in this xenophobic anti-thing, and don't apologize for wanting a rational immigration policy either. Don't worry, that leader will be rational. Yes?
Charlie, what do you think of consecration?
Consecration is always a great thing. Consecration of Jesus through Mary, the 33 days to morning glory. There are many different consecrations. I'll say this about devotions. People want me frequently to endorse a specific devotion. I don't. I like the Rosary. I like the Divine Mercy Chaplet. I like the Flame of Love devotion. But here's how God is. Don't think that you're going to get things by piling devotion upon devotion, okay? This is not magic. And if you do all the devotions in the world, that still doesn't force God to take you in. God is a God of abundance, and he knows that different people, different devotions speak to different people. Just like different foods. I like chicken fried steak. I don't like sushi. You're perfectly happy to have your sushi while I have my chicken fried steak, and we'll both be happy. God wants you to take a few devotions that speak to you and live them well. You know, so yes, that's what a consecration recommended by the church. A pious consecration is always good, but I won't tell you you need to do this one and not that one. You know, and get out and do the work. Yes, and then I'll come back here, and then you. Go ahead.
What about our church? Because
I appreciate your question. He asked, you know, there's so many different versions of Christianity and all that, and they're not all Christian. The prosperity gospel he mentioned, which is so banal, and that. But here's the thing. You know, Mother Teresa once was asked what was the greatest problem in the church. And she said that I am a sinner. You will not be held to account for what the prosperity gospel preachers preach. They will. Trust God to hold everyone to account. You will be held to account for what the things you could have done and didn't do. One of the reasons for the storm, the main reason for the storm, is because we've so completely lost sight of God and our dependence on him. One of the great fruits of the storm is that we will all be united again. We truly will all be one. For that purpose, I mean, in the storm itself, we'll show people the rescue. When we visibly and miraculously are rescued by Our Lady, it's going to let people know that, hey, Jesus is Lord, and he likes his mom. So the thing is, I've been told that during these times we are to treat all fellow Christians and Jews as full and equal partners in the work before us. And all people of any faith, or no faith at all, of goodwill, as genuine neighbors in the thing. And the fruit of the storm is that we will all be one again. Now, when I say that we'll all be one, occasionally, I think most people have gotten past it. Occasionally people think, well, Charlie's Catholic, so that means we win. It's not like that. It's like a joyful family reunion where everybody brings a dish. And I've described it that way many times. The thing is, once we're rescued, for our Protestant brothers and sisters, at the Reformation, they lost the structure and foundation that's so critical. That's why you have 10, 20,000 different denominations on that. They lost the structure and foundation. They will regain that again. But having been through both, I can tell you, there's some real charisms in a lot of Protestant churches that we've so neglected that we practically don't have them anymore. And something else, having been around, there's a lot of abuses. You mentioned the prosperity gospel, and that's a serious abuse. Frankly, I think it's an abuse run by con men most of the time, even if they kid themselves otherwise. But one thing the Catholic Church is more infected with than any other church I know, some of the greatest heroes I've ever known wear the clerical collar. They're doing wonderful work. But the Catholic Church is more infected with clericalism than any other church I know. Clericalism is using the things of God for mere temporal advantage or advancement. I mean, for some people, it's a terrible problem here. This is going to reignite, the storm itself will reignite a lot of faith in people that have lost their faith. And I don't want to kid you, but too many, way too many, of those who are clerics don't actually believe in God. I met a lot of them in Chicago. The storm is going to bring them back. We all need each other. And the storm and the rescue are going to make that clear, that we are all one. Jesus is Lord. And like I say, for all you Protestants, he really does like his mom. So, You were next.
I am from Guatemala, Latin America, and you talk a lot about the United States, but what can I tell people in Latin America about all of this?
Well, this comes to the whole world.
Right.
The same thing I'm saying, I mean, in truth, I speak frequently. I mean, if you read the writings, I speak most frequently about the United States, America, I mean the US, Russia, and China, because those are the three main actors in this. I already said that the Latin American people are going to play a big role in this stuff, but the whole thing throughout the world, acknowledge God, take the next right step, be a sign of hope, is the key to everything. There are different nations that will play roles coming in and going out, but this is not a contest to see who's the most important.
Right.
You know what I mean? The Latin American people will play a role. I had some of my European readers, I had a lot of them. They were asking me for a while, what about us? What role do we play? And I finally told them. I said, 100 years ago, Europe was chock full of great powers, and you've all made yourself eunuchs. You will play the role that eunuchs usually do in great crises. You'll get kicked around by people that are stronger than you, and it's your own fault. With Great Britain, it seems like some of those guys decided to stand up on their hind legs and govern themselves again. I'm looking at them with some hope. With Australia, I have great hope that they're going to play a role because they've never quite knuckled under. But I do know, and I don't know what the role is, but I do know that it's important what I was just saying to you. Don't get caught up in any sort of xenophobia. Don't get caught in that, because control our borders, but the Latin American, the Spanish-speaking peoples have a big role to play before it's all said and done, but not the primary role.
But in Guatemala, the government is so corrupt.
Okay, now we're not going to get into that.
No, but
Every government in the world is corrupt.
okay.
We have never had a period in our history. We have had regions that had incompetent, corrupt leaders. This is notable because almost every government in the world is notable. Trust me, God is not going to renew the whole world, but except for Guatemala. Who cares about that? Guatemala's going to get renewed too. This is for the whole world. You guys in Guatemala, you get on my nerves. No, Guatemala will be renewed too. Venezuela, you go through the Latin America, it's kind of funny because the Latin American countries right now, they have suffered so much with so much corruption and so much violence. Mexico, it's more violence than the U.S., and that's saying something right now. People talk about the Wild West. I was reading some statistics. You are about 25 times more likely to be murdered in Chicago than anybody ever was in the Wild West. You think about that. Let's see. Yes. And then you, go ahead.
I have kind of a two-part question.
I have a great respect for Father Espers, and he does some mighty good work. But I have to be completely candid. And no, there's not going to be any glowing crosses in your forehead. Some of these things are symbolic. Somebody that sees truth may interpret badly. You're not going to see, crosses in the forehead and all that, I don't believe. But you will have an instinct for knowing when, to invite someone and when not to, and that sort of thing. Being led to refuges, here's a fact. 80% or better of the people at the end of the storm, at the rescue, will be right where they began it. People get this idea in mind of a zombie apocalypse or the War of the Worlds. When you really have a collapse, it's not like that. Most people struggle, keep their heads low, but they aren't bombed and all that sort of stuff. Most people won't have to go to refuges. Will you have an idea? I know when I walked across the country, there were certain times where, by chance, Maybe not so much by chance. I went one way instead of another. That way, but no, I really don't think that an angel is going to come down and say, hey, follow me. And if they did, most people wouldn't trust it anyway. You know what I mean? So I think it's the same promptings of the Spirit that we're talking about. I want to say that, you know, I told one group, I can get a little testy sometimes. And I've tried to be more patient about it. But one group were talking to me about how some supposed prophet had come to them and told them that the deer would fall dead right at their feet and it'd be the glowing Eucharist in everybody's head. I said, no, no, no. I said, look, God promised to lead the Israelites to a land flowing with milk and honey. And he did. But when they got there, they still had to milk the cows and raise the bees, and so will you. You know, that's just the thing. You've got to stretch out your hand. Will God give special helps? Yeah, he may very well do that. But I am skeptical about any crosses in foreheads. And if he did put crosses in foreheads, do you think the devil's a chump? The devil knows how to do counterfeits. Oh, all I got to do to sneak in is put a little cross in the forehead. No problem. He would. You know what I mean? And the devil can appear as an angel of light. You've got to count on God every step of the way. So, you know, again, I don't want this to sound like anything, but I think Father Espers is speaking symbolically there. And I have great respect for the body of work he does. Oh, no, it's not a second part, it's a second question. I'll go ahead, but then we get to somebody else.
Will we be able to visit our family that's like an hour away and stuff?
I don't know. I mean, why? See, now, and I want to tell you, that's a question. You need to trust God more. People often ask me, will I be able to have every convenience that I have right now that most people throughout history have not had? Well, probably not for a while. After the rescue, technology isn't going to change. I mean, we'll have it. The laws of physics are not going to change. But you're going to be inconvenienced for a while. And you may not be able. You may not be able to visit your relatives a half an hour. And I have no exemptions to give out. I don't have an exemption to give out to me. You know what I mean? So I don't know the answers to that. Some people will, some won't. The important thing is not how is it going to affect me. The important thing is what is the next right step that God calls me to. When you're thinking that way, you're going to find joy, you'll stay in joy, and you'll be okay. And you'll get the things that you need. One of the things I was told in what I call a little vision. Little visions are not unimportant. It's a certain style of vision that is very stylized. I'd have something happen. I'd be seeing, I mean, you know, like a little miniature movie, 10 minutes short. Better than Steven Spielberg, usually. And at the end, my angel would say a very pithy statement that brought it into focus in a strange way, but also stood on its own. And one of them that's always stood out is, what you desire most is most effective against you. Desire God, and all shall be added. If you're worried about, will I be able to get my gummy raspberries, which is something that worries me a lot, then, you know, you probably won't, and all that. When you worry about how can I do the next right step, whatever God sends me, trusting that whatever he forces me to sacrifice for a time is for my good and the good of others, then peace comes, then joy comes, and all that. But as far as conveniences, as far as all of that, I really don't have any reassurances to give you other than to trust God and take the next right step. All right? Okay, you, and then we're going to come back to you. God is not going to revoke our free will, but Satan's power is broken. That doesn't mean he's chained, but he's driven to ground. There are some people that will still rebel. There are some people that just will not. Even when they see, they will not follow God. They will not believe that anything is greater than themselves. I've told occasionally the story of Émile Zola, the great French naturalist and author, who was an atheist, and he decided he was going to discredit Lourdes. That was a silly plan. He took a girl with lupus, 14-year-old girl with lupus, Marie Le Marchand, to Lourdes, and he was going to bathe her in the waters, had her examined ahead of time by doctors, and when she wasn't healed, then he figured it wouldn't prove anything because people were being healed, but he figured it'd given him opportunity to ridicule the church and ridicule the faith. Poor Emile. She was miraculously and immediately healed. He had to go through 7 doctors to examine, and they had no explanation except it was miraculous. And her face had been ravaged by the lupus before. I mean, it was much more devastating before we had modern treatment. He was furious. He said that if I saw 1,000 people healed at Lourdes, I would never believe in a miracle. He was so filthy and ugly on the train back to Paris, he bitterly told Marie that he thought she was uglier now than she was when he first met her. I mean, yeah, it was hideous on the thing. He was furious. He would not believe there was something greater than himself. Interestingly, though, the rest of his life, his writings were influenced. He never could get past. It haunted him, what had happened at Lourdes. After the rescue, when you visibly and miraculously, and everybody sees, there will be some. There will be a few Émile Zolas among us. But for normal people, we get into plenty of scrapes by ourselves. We scratch ourselves up. We get that. What the devil does, you know, you get a cut on your leg and all that, it heals. What the devil does, he's like an infection. He infects it. He creates blood poisoning. He makes it so much worse. His power to do that will be dramatically diminished, but he'll still be plotting and planning for a comeback. But right now, if you were going to call this a movie, you name this after a movie, it's The Return of the Jedi. And I think you had, then we'll come back to you, and then I'll go back there. Go ahead.
I just wanted to hear what you.
America, when it's restored, will ally with Russia. Russia will be the most steadfast ally. So it doesn't surprise me that Russia is, that Russia is doing godly things, and it kind of likes Christians. Go figure. It's weird. See, it's weird to you because you were born sometime around the time I was. And when I was a kid, I mean in the 60s, Russia was the anti-Christian, kill them all, and America was the godly place. And we completely flip-flopped. It's like, it's kind of like we live in bizarro land right now. Yes, Mark.
So, you had mentioned that after the...
What I want you to think, and you can interpret it whatever way you want, but everybody in the world, and here for contemplation, everybody in the world will think it's over, that it's ending. Everybody in the world will see that we are rescued miraculously. Everybody in the world will see that it's by Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. I want you to think about how that would affect even the most committed anti-Christians. It's going to change things. That's why I say you'll have a few Émile Zolas around, but it changes everything, So take it and contemplate it. That's as much of an answer as I can give on that. But we will all be one. With some bad actors still out there. Who did I have all right, guys, I told you I'd give you your second question. I don't care. They too will see that Our Lady has miraculously rescued them. In China right now, the Chinese system is one of the most ungodly, anti-godly systems ever. The Chinese system has tried to wipe out Christianity, but this is something Father Mitch and I have talked about several times.
Well, isn't that a reason to care?
Well, no, and I'll explain why. After the rescue, everybody knows. Why would I care? they're going to be a godly people again. They'll be a Christian nation again. Okay? If they want to have a king, I mean, there are many different ways. If they're going to have a king, that's fine. If they're going to have a prime minister, that's fine. I don't care how they do it. I mean, the whole world. I'm not talking about America or Guatemala or Uruguay or Peru. The whole world. Internalize this. This is not just for America. The whole world will choose their own form of governments, the various nations, because God likes to have a lot of flowers, a lot of different flowers in his garden. But they will all be godly nations governed by people who know that Jesus is Lord. So that's why I don't care.
Cool.
No, okay, all right. Better answer than you thought, huh? Yes. I have great respect for Medjugorje. I have great respect for Garabandal, but I don't comment on their thing. I have my work to do. My job is not to analyze every other apparition that comes around, whether they're authentic or not. I will tell you that I do believe Medjugorje is fundamentally authentic with more than a few barnacles attached to it. And I have a hefty respect for Garabandal as well. But it's just not my job to decide that. That's the church's job. But I have respect for them. Yes, Chris. We're in dire straits. Democracy, constitutional republic, it is gone. The rule of law is dead in America, as you all know, on the thing. When a patient is healthy, when a man is healthy and walking around, there's one set of circumstances. If he is bleeding, if he has been badly injured, he may be restrained, he may be strapped to a table. I mean, there's a lot of different things on it. So we'll be living under emergency rules for a while, but emergency rules not designed to hold the patient down, but to recover him to health. There will be things where it will become more obvious as we go along. But here's the thing. I know when I used to hear from some of my Protestant people, they're Catholic. I don't trust them. They're all going to hell. And then I hear from some Catholics sometimes to talk about somebody who's doing great work, or is a good fellow, and they'll say, "Is he Catholic?" A godly man, somebody that's doing something good, respect it in and for itself, and trust that God is going to bring everybody together. One of the things that I do is I look at hearts. I'll tell you a little story. Sorry, I always like stories. That's what I do. It's like Geico. That's what I do. I tell stories. In Alabama, early on in my pilgrimage, came to a place where they had a little convenience store. In Alabama, they're big on combination gas station, convenience store, restaurant, canoe rental, accounting service, Well, in the morning I came and saw, and it was about 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, and I saw coffee. So I went in. Nobody was in the parking lot. The gal behind the counter, she sees me walk in with the pack, a heavy pack, and I didn't pull up or anything. She knows something's going on. And she asked me what's going on. I tell her the story of what I'm doing. She was utterly charmed. They had a section over there with tables and chairs. She said, "You sit down there, you have as much coffee as you want." And she got me a few pastries too. I figured this is cool. Of course, she didn't buy them for me. Whoever owned the place bought them for me and didn't know it. But I was getting coffee out of the deal, so I wasn't complaining. A few minutes later, this man walks in, about my age, maybe a little older. And he goes up to the gal. He was obviously a regular. And when you're the only one in the place, when people are talking about you because they're... So he comes over and sits down. And he's got a big, he asks, if he can sit down. He's got a big smile. I talked to him. And before I sat down, he said, "Now look, I got to tell you, I want to talk with you, but I'm an atheist." And I looked at him and I said, don't worry about that, the way I look at it. If you got goodwill in your heart, God will correct and overlook a little confusion on your head or on your lips. If you got bad will in your heart, you can say Jesus all you want to. You may even fool yourself, but you ain't fooling God. And he laughed, said, okay. So we talked about everything. We talked for about an hour and a half. We talked about the foods he liked, the foods I like, his kids, my kids, all sorts of things. We just went around, but we didn't talk about religion. The funny thing was, at the end, we were burning daylight, so I had to get up and go. And I told him, I got to get going and everything. And he looks at me, and he said, if things are the way you say, I hope there is a God. I said, there is. He's going to take your good wishes for me as a prayer. He said, that'd be all right. The thing is, when you meet someone of goodwill, don't think that you have to beat them into believing exactly as you do. My whole thing is, you don't have to agree with me to be my friend. But you do have to respect my conscience as I respect yours, or else we'll have to part company. That's all. So when you see someone of goodwill that'll work with you, that'll yoke himself up, then go ahead and trust God. These are striking times. God's going to bring him along. By your good example, by living it joyfully and meaning it, you have no idea how many conversions and how many vocations that's going to spark. So that's my answer. And whatever the guy is on that, what was that thing? That's my final answer. I'm not going to phone a friend. Anybody else? Holy cow, are we all done? I believe we are. Well, before we are, let me do this. This prayer. Have everybody got your prayer of miraculous trust? Who doesn't have one? Give them one. This is so important for these times. I was given this prayer right around the turn of the millennium by my angel, who said that it will be very important during the storm and that great things will be accomplished through it. It's very simple. You can internalize it. It's largely about learning how to pray. Frequently we think that what you need is faith. Faith is the beginning, not the end. Faith is knowing that Jesus is Lord, and he is Lord. But the demons in hell know the same, as it says in James, and they tremble. Fat lot of good it does them. Once you go beyond faith, a lot of times the things that we want are not good for us. You have to trust that once you ask God for something, then you trust that whatever he allows to happen after that is for your good or the good of those around you. And then you go even beyond that to surrender. Lord, make me a willing instrument to accomplish that good. So this prayer starts bluntly, asking what your intention is. And then ask to go deeper into trust and surrender. And it involves invoking the help of the church triumphant, invoking the help of an angel or a saint and everything. And in the end, after you've made your request, thanking God for hearing you and affirming that you want his will to be done because you know his is the perfect will. All too often, we treat, and this is a form of prosperity gospel, we treat God as a genie and prayer as the lamp, which if we rub just right, will force him to do what we want. That's not what he is. Prayer is about aligning us with God's will, not aligning God with our will and everything. So I'm going to say this, and oh my goodness, I got a Spanish one. I don't speak Spanish. He's got one for me. But wait a minute, let's see. Let's say it together on that. And when we ask, well, I'll state the intention. When we ask for the intercession, I think I'm going to ask for St. Francis. I'm going to get a couple in. St. Francis, St. Raphael, because I was there at that church this morning, and St. Anselm, because that's the town I'm staying in for it. So I begin by asking the help of Our Lady of Tepeyac, crossing ourselves and saying, by the power of our Lord Jesus Christ, to the honor of Our Lady, the Immaculate Conception, in service to her Immaculate Heart, I ask you, Lord, to bless the people of Marin County, to bless the people of San Francisco, to lead them, to become your servants, to be signs of hope to everybody around them. As the darkness falls, to lead more people to light and joy. And I ask you to send St. Francis, St. Raphael, and St. Anselm to guide, to inspire, and to help them to do these things. I thank you for hearing my prayer. Thy will be done. Amen. And do you know why Our Lady of Tepeyac? She's equally well called Our Lady of Guadalupe. And since we've got a few more minutes, maybe I ought to tell you. You want to hear? Yeah. All right. She told me back around 1998, you know, when the missionaries were here trying to evangelize the Indians, they tried, they worked, and they failed. They failed. So Our Lady came to help to convert the Indians herself. And she succeeded. Shortly after she appeared to St. Juan Diego, the cult of Quetzalcoatl was dead. It was about a decade with all the Indians, functionally all the Indians converted to Christianity. Now, as you may know, if you know the story of St. Juan Diego and Our Lady of Guadalupe appearing to him, he asked her at one point, or his uncle asked her who she was. And she said in the Nahuatl, that was the language they speak, that she was Tecuatlashupe, which means she who crushes the serpent. When Bishop Zumarraga heard that, it sounded like Guadalupe. That's how she came. It's the only image. She appeared at Tepeyac Hill. It's the only image where she is not known by where she appeared or by her primary effect. There may be another one. It's the only one I know, and no priest has given me another one. Honest thing. But the New World then was evangelized from the Old by Our Lady. The reason for this was she told me at one point that as bad as things were in the New World, that it was far worse in the Old World, and that she was going to re-evangelize the Old World from the New, and that she would do it under her proper American title, which is Our Lady of Tepeyac, which does not mean that her European title is improper. Actually, it's a sign of unity. She evangelized the Americans under the European title of Our Lady of Guadalupe. She'll evangelize the rest of the world under the title of Our Lady of Tepeyac, her American title. There's many reasons for it. In fact, when Pope Francis was elected, I'd always said that the old world would be re-evangelized from the new. I thought that was the beginning of the fulfillment of that. She is the mother of conversion. And it actually is through her that ultimately you're going to see, in the next year, you're going to see something as staggering as the conversion of the Aztecs. The Muslims will be converted by Our Lady of Tepeyac, primarily through its women. It will not happen until we in the West take it seriously and confront it both intellectually and militarily. Once we do, you will be stunned at how quick it falls. And before it's all over, a lot of those Muslim souls will be our ally Paul's in the fight against China. And it'll come through the intercession of Our Lady of Tepeyac. So, that's it. Quite a tale, huh? I got a million of them. Yes. Anything else at all? Okay, we're almost done. Let's say a St. Michael prayer one more time. And then that's actually going to have about 20 minutes before they're going to toss us out of here. We can chat. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our safeguard against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Thank you. Amen.